Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Good morning. My name's Davisson. For those that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I know most, or at least a large number of folks here who are with us today. I'm the Emergency Management Director here at WashU, so it is truly my privilege and pleasure to be able to introduce our speaker this morning. You all are really in for a treat. So for those that are unfamiliar, the National Weather Service is a federal agency. They have field offices that are set up around the country. They are the ones who are responsible primarily for a variety of things, and I'm sure Kevin will talk about some of those, but the ones that you probably see most visibly are the issuances of tornado watches, severe thunderstorm watches, and warnings. And we're going to specifically talk about tornadoes this morning. It's really a very relevant topic, given some of the experiences we've had here over the last year, especially back in May. We are very fortunate to have an exceptional field office here in the St. Louis region that is very active, very progressive, and I would say they are one of the closest partners that we have here within our WashU Emergency Management and Public Safety partnerships. We are regularly engaged with them. We consume all of their products, and we use those to make good risk-based decisions and to make sure that we can notify our campus community in a timely way. And on a personal level, our warning coordinator meteorologist, Kevin Deitsch, who is going to be speaking to you here in just a couple of minutes, has been here in the St. Louis field office for about 10 years. Since 2018, when he took on the role of warning coordinator meteorologist, we've worked even more closely together. And he is somebody who is truly exceptional at serving the St. Louis community. I'm excited for what he's going to be able to talk to you about. I know from speaking with him this morning and just working with him over the years, he really would love for this to be an interactive presentation. So now is the time for you to ask any of those tricky tornado-related questions. If you ever had any curiosity about what forms a tornado, or when they issue a warning, or what to expect, or whether or not you should go to your window with your cell phone and film a tornado that's coming at you, or whatever wild questions you might have, Kevin will be the guy to be able to answer all of those for you. So please make sure you take advantage of that opportunity. With no further ado, nobody wants to listen to me, so I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk about tornadoes.
Awesome. Thank you, Ty. That was a lot of smoke blown, so. All right, who worked the mid-shift last night? Anyone work the overnight shift? A couple of you. So I used to work overnight shifts. I feel your pain right now, so I appreciate you being here. All right, so let me see if I can figure this bad boy out. Here we go. You guys remember this event? Yeah, right? Terrible event, ripped through the heart of our town. Here's kind of some of the facts of it. EF3 tornado, winds of 150 miles per hour. It was 22.8 miles long, on the ground for almost a half an hour, 27 minutes, going right through basically from Clayton over into Illinois. 4 deaths. There's actually a 5th death in South City, but 4 deaths directly related to the tornado, 38 injuries, $1.6 billion in damage. And sadly, this was our first deadly tornado in the city of St. Louis since 1959. So to say that it hit our office hard is an understatement. When all that was going on, I know there's first responders and folks that were on the ground, but us seeing the radar data, knowing how bad it was going to be at the time was tough. It was a tough day in the office. So let's talk a little bit about the Weather Service. Ty kind of set me up well for this slide, but who are we? Well, we're your local meteorologists. We're kind of like to say we're more behind the scenes than you might see on TV, but we do the same type of work that they do. So we're staffed 24/7, 365. We typically have at least 2 meteorologists in our building at all time, looking at the weather, making sure the forecast is up to date. Like Ty mentioned, you likely know us the most from the warnings that we issue. So we put out the tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, flood warnings, all the types of warnings, winter storm warnings, to keep you safe and to help Ty and emergency managers make decisions based on weather. That's really a big part of what we do. So, like Ty mentioned, we are part of the federal government. I just thought I'd show you kind of where we sit in the federal government. So we're in the executive branch under the Department of Commerce. And then under that, it's NOAA. A lot of you probably heard of NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That's a very tough one to say. And then we're the National Weather Service within NOAA, and specifically the National Weather Service here in St. Louis. So what you probably know about weather and deal with on a day-to-day basis is what I like to call kind of the tip of the iceberg. So there's a lot that goes into weather. You know, you usually see the end product, whether it's on your phone, you're watching TV, maybe you have a weather radio, that's kind of the end product. But how do we get there? First, we have to take observations, right? A forecast is only as good as knowing what's going on right now. So we use radar, satellite, surface observing equipment, stream gauges to tell us how high the rivers are, soil moisture to tell us how moist the ground is, all sorts of different observations. And we kind of take those and we put it into that right side there, the modeling piece of everything. So we take all those observations, put it into a model, so then that model can start projecting things out into the future. We also have river forecast centers, so they're the ones that take that model data of rainfall, soil moisture, how much of that rain is going to actually get into the rivers. Is that going to cause flooding? Is that not going to cause flooding? And then finally there at the bottom left, that's what we do. We're a weather forecast office. So we're the ones doing what we call impact-based decision support services, which is basically helping folks like Ty keep you all safe, giving him information, telling him what are his thresholds and how we can help them, how we can help give a forecast to those thresholds. And then like I mentioned before, those local forecasts in the mornings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tornado itself. And first I'm going to kind of answer the question, what type of storm was this? And why did it get so bad here? So this was what we call, before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about radar. Anybody ever seen radar before? Hopefully all of you? Yeah? Good. So reflectivity is what you see here. So basically what a radar does is it shoots a beam of energy out, and then whatever it hits, it reflects energy back to the radar. So the radar shoots out a beam of energy, and then it listens. So if the radar beam hits a lot of stuff, rain, hail, snow, in some cases, and in this case of the tornado, tornadic debris, radar's hitting that, and a lot of energy is bouncing back to the radar, you get a lot more of these colors, those whites or those dark reds. If it hits less stuff, you get the greens. If it hits no stuff at all, you don't get any return. What makes a radar a Doppler radar, a lot of you probably heard the term Doppler radar. Well, Doppler radars can see motion toward and away from it. It's really important for us in tornadic situations because then we can see motions toward and away from the radar, or what we call rotation. Okay, so here's an example of rotation. You can see kind of where I've got the box there, the reds are meeting the greens. Reds mean, you can see the star, that's where the radar is. So red's kind of motion away from the radar, green's motion towards the radar. So in this case, we're seeing a pretty tight circulation just to the southwest of our radar here in St. Louis. So what this storm was is what's called a supercell thunderstorm. There's really three types of thunderstorms, okay? So there's what we call a pulse thunderstorm. And for those that have been around the last few days, it's exactly what we've been seeing the last couple of days. It's what we call pulse thunderstorms. They're storms that go straight up, maybe 40,000, 50,000 feet in the air, and they come right back down. There's no real motion in the wind field, in the atmosphere to kind of tilt that storm and to keep it going. So it just goes straight up because there's really no wind, and then straight down because there's really no wind. Typically this time of year too, we'll also see this middle one, those clusters, or those lines of thunderstorms. So what those are, typically they bring us more long-lived wind threats. Some of you may have heard of the term derecho before. That's a long-lived windstorm. Those clusters or those bow echoes or line of thunderstorms are typically what we get with that. Then finally here, the supercell, and that's unfortunately what our storm was for the St. Louis tornado. It's called a supercell thunderstorm. What it is it's a singular storm, but the entire storm itself is rotating. It's pretty wild. If you actually look at a satellite image of these things, you can actually see the entire storm rotating. And these, unfortunately, are what bring us our largest hail, and they typically bring us our largest tornadoes. So what does this look like to the naked eye when you're kind of looking at a thunderstorm? So nerd out with me just real quick. Promise, it's my only nerdy slide. But what this is a super thunderstorm. You're kind of looking at it from basically the west. So what you have here, this red air represents what we call the updraft. So when a storm forms, it's air that's moving straight up into the atmosphere. Believe it or not, motions in a supercell thunderstorm straight up can reach over 100 miles an hour. So any pilots in the room, don't fly through that. That's bad. 100 miles an hour straight up. That'd give you some turbulence. Underneath, look, how do I go back? Underneath that, let's see if I can go backwards. Underneath that is where we have what we call the wall cloud and then eventually the tornado. But really all the exciting / scary things that happen under a supercell thunderstorm happen underneath this large updraft, and this is typically where the tornado would form. All right, so I want to show you a little bit of radar from the tornado, just to give you an idea of kind of what it looked like and what we were seeing in the office. It was just easier to go to this. So by the way, why I have this up, this is a website that we have. You just Google St. Louis tornado NWS, it should pop up. It's got so much information on the tornado itself and kind of how it all evolved. But here's kind of what it looked like at first. I don't have it over there, stand by. Oh, thank you, whoever's doing that. It's like magic, it's great. So you can see well southwest of St. Louis, the kind of beginnings of the thunderstorm. It doesn't look like too much. You can see it strengthening, right? Remember I talked about that reflectivity, that's here on the left, and the velocities here on the right. But you're going from those greens to more yellows and reds. Okay, so starting to get stronger, something we're keeping our eye on. So then we go a little bit further, and it starts to get stronger. So you can see now we've got a lot of whites and reds in here. And this kind of goes basically from Gasconade County through southern Warren County, right over our radar. So one little story I want to tell about this. My car that I drove today is still totaled from the hail that we took that day. Our entire parking lot got basically ping pong ball to tennis ball sized hail right as this thing was kind of getting its act together over our radar. What's challenging when a storm develops and moves over your radar is you can't see it. It's called the cone of silence. So our radar can only see things out from it. It can't look straight up. So that made this storm a real challenge for us because not only were we just getting, we're meteorologists, so when you're getting tennis ball sized hail outside, you have a tendency to want to get distracted by that, right? But we couldn't because we knew this storm was a little concerning and it was starting to become more concerning with time. So we did a really good job of staying focused despite windshields breaking and things in our parking lot getting destroyed. So that's where our radar is here, where it says it's KLSX, that's our radar. But one other thing I want to note, see how the storm splits? You can see that kind of one moving to the north, and I'll let it play one more time. Watch this storm here on the top. See how it kind of goes off to the north? So this is called a splitting supercell. So that supercell thunderstorm I told you about, that's rotating. What happened when it splits, sometimes when it splits, it becomes more able to produce tornadoes. It moves better with the wind field, and so you get more low-level rotation in the storm. And so as soon as that split happened, we started to get concerned at the Weather Service. So the storm that ended up moving through the city was what we call a right-moving supercell. So it split, moved to the right, and that usually doesn't mean good things. By the end of this, I want you to kind of see, we're starting to get some of those rotations that I talked about earlier where those red and greens kind of meet each other. I'm going to go forward here one more time to show how this finally evolves. So again, this is going to start, the loop starts when it's just kind of east of our radar, so Chesterfield Valley, for the folks that know where that is. That's really where we started to get signs of rotation increasing. And I got little arrows on here. So again, this is the velocity data. So those blues are radars toward our velocities toward our radar, and the reds are those velocities away from our radar. And you can see with time how they come together, but then they start to curve a little bit. That's what we call rotational convergence. So that's something that we were really keeping an eye on, and at that point is when we issued the tornado warning. We didn't have a tornado on the ground quite yet. We had about 4 to 5 minutes of lead time before the tornado actually touched down, which ideally we want much longer lead times than that. But in a case like this, since it was moving right over our radar, it's just really hard to see it kind of coming together until it got a little further away from our radar. So it's just starting at this point, and then here's kind of where the tornado is the absolute worst. You'll notice how the box here turns from a red to a purple. What that is we can actually put out a tornado warning that says there's one on the ground and that it's doing kind of considerable damage. So in this case, we can upgrade the tornado warning and say, okay, it's actually on the ground, it's large, dangerous, and doing a lot of damage. So you can see here the rotation. See these reds and greens close to each other? That's right where the tornado is, and it was a fairly broad, what we call broad circulation, so it was a large tornado. The motions kind of with this were about 70 knots of rotational velocity, so that's about 140 miles an hour rotation. So the tornado ended up being about 150 miles an hour, so the radar actually is pretty spot on to seeing that. But again, you can see kind of where it tracked right through Clayton, through North City, and actually a lot of folks don't know this, but it actually crossed the river and went over to Illinois as well. It was much weaker by that point. So I just wanted to show kind of how that evolved from a radar standpoint and what we as meteorologists were so concerned about. One other thing that I didn't show on here is we can actually see tornadic debris with our radar as well. And that debris was lofted anywhere between about 6,000 and 10,000 feet. So that's how strong that tornado was, lifting things and lofting them to near 10,000 feet. Okay, let's see if I know how to go back to this. Here. So here's just a look at some of the devastating pictures. And again, on our website, we have more. So after the tornado, we do a survey, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, but that's where a lot of these pictures came from. But you can just see the different types of devastation. So how do we communicate this threat? How do we let people know that this is coming, this is happening? One of the ways we do this, I know it's kind of a lot to throw at you, but Ty might talk a little bit about this, is we call these decision support packets. So basically we send all of this information out a day, 2 days, 3 days in advance of storms to let our partners know that, hey, Wednesday is going to look bad, Friday looks bad, this is why, this is what we're watching. Gives you all a chance to kind of prepare, let you know that this kind of stuff's coming. So this is what we sent out the morning of the tornado. We were in this level 4 out of 5, so basically that's a 4 out of 5 threat of severe weather, so pretty high threat. It's rare that we get to a 5 out of 5. It's actually been a long time since we've been to a 5 out of 5. So 4 out of 5 is a pretty big deal. You can see the timing, so we let folks know, all right, when's it supposed to start, when's it supposed to end, so between 1 and 3, and ending between 2 and 4. So it's gonna be a quick shot, which it was, unfortunately, hitting around 2:30 or so. Then this slide really helps folks like Ty because it gives them our confidence level. Let's be honest, meteorology is a tough science, right? It's not a perfect science. There are days where we're really confident something's gonna happen. There are other days where it might be really bad, or nothing might happen at all. How do we communicate that? Well, this is a way that we do this on this confidence slide. So we still had some concerns about strong tornadoes. I won't lie, we weren't really sure if we were gonna get all the ingredients there. What really, I think, in this case, made that strong tornado through St. Louis was the fact that it split like that right-moving split. That gave it that extra oomph that it needed to produce a tornado. Without that, I don't think we would have had a tornado at all in the city. And then here on the bottom right, just gives you the different idea of threats. So one thing we knew we were going to have on this day we were concerned about was hail. My car felt it. Some other folks' car may have felt it that day. We did have up to baseball-sized hail that day. We did have some damaging winds, and again, the strong tornadoes we were talking about, but we weren't really sure how many of them we were going to get. And in reality, we didn't get many. We had one in St. Louis, and we had one down in southeast Missouri. That was really it. Fortunately, the one happened to be right in Metro. So one thing that we do kind of leading up, like I mentioned, those packets, but then we also do weather briefings. So we do a little 5-minute snip, at least twice a day, sometimes more often if things are evolving rapidly. But again, letting folks, our partners know, the TV meteorologists, emergency managers, law enforcement, fire, they all have access to this and can watch kind of what we expect for their community. So I actually did the one that morning and talked about the different things that we expected that day. I also talked about, before the storms even developed, how we expected splitting supercells that day. Sure enough, this is what we ended up getting. So kind of gave our partners a heads up that, hey, these storms might split, and because of that, it actually might be challenging for us to draw warnings, because when storms split, a lot of times we have to kind of overlap our warnings with each other, which we hate to do because it creates a lot of confusion. But we talked about that morning. We talked about how the ones that do split will have a larger threat of tornadoes. So here's some different things that we talked about. So this is anybody ever heard of Slack? Some communications? Yeah, if you do, perfect. So Slack is the way that we talk to our partners. We let all these folks in, public safety groups in, TV meteorologists in, and we talk consistently, constantly when there are events like this. giving updates, sharing information. So here was one of the first things that we got from this storm. This was out in Chesterfield of that near baseball size hail. This case was more like a tennis ball. And then here I am talking about, we're taking it on the chin here at the office. That's when we were getting slammed with our hail. And like I said, we were kind of watching for things to happen from there. Going forward, I'm talking here in this chat, all right, we're putting out a tornado warning. And the nice thing about this chat is I can tell people this warning's coming before it's even out, because it takes us a minute or so to actually draw it up. So the TV meteorologists that have to cut in, they're all getting ready. They're like, we're ready to go. As soon as that tornado warning is issued, we're going to be on the air. So this is such value-added information that we're able to provide in this chat system. So talking about we're seeing signs of rotation, we're drawing up a tornado warning. Now I'm getting worried. I'm going all caps. It's never a good thing, right? Rotation increasing. I'm talking, showing kind of where exactly that's occurring. Now I'm doing tornado on the ground. We have this little nice emoji that we always use for tornado on the ground. It's a flashing red light. It really gets your attention if you're in the chat room. And you can see a lot of folks know about the hook echo, right? You see the TV meteorologist getting all excited. For those who watch Steve Templeton rolling his sleeves up, right? Talking about the hook echo. Well, that's exactly what I was pointing out here on the left-hand side, was this hook echo and that rotation increasing. So tornado on the ground, this is a very dangerous storm. I talked about how we can upgrade those tornado warnings. That's what we did here, that considerable tornado warning. Again, all caps, seek shelter if in St. Louis. We were trying to ring all the bells and whistles that we could, but this is gonna be bad. 6,000 feet, tornadic debris by 246. Now, it crosses the river. Again, you can still see that circulation. What was interesting about this event is it took a long time to get any reports. I think just because everyone was in response mode at that point, sometimes we get forgotten about it. I totally understand, right? You're dealing with damage, you're fixing things, but we didn't know that the damage was what it was until a while afterwards. But what we did know is we can use Google traffic, and you can see exactly, a little hard to see there, but everywhere that this little purple line is, there's red. So you can see right down the track, just based on Google Map data, where the tornado likely went through. So we finally, by about 3 o'clock, so mind you, this is 20 to 30 minutes after the tornado, finally, this is really the first tell, 911 that hit our cell tower from the city of St. Louis. The building was hit by something, windows shattered, and numerous injuries. That was our first, like, oh, injuries. This could be bad. Then we started getting some pictures. So this was about 30 to 40 minutes after the tornado. And it's a little hard to tell because this is probably some rain here on the right. But I think back in here, that actually is likely the tornado. It was a large tornado. It's about a mile wide. I think I mentioned that before. So this looks probably a mile wide or so. Finally, by about an hour after the tornado, this is our first actual picture of damage from Leah at KMOV. Again, I think everyone was just kind of in response mode at that point, so it just took a while for damage to trickle in. So that's kind of the day of. One thing that I wanted to mention, kind of the post-event support that we give. So we are the ones that go out and rate the tornado. So after all the damage is done, the next morning we'll go out and say how strong the winds needed to be to do that type of damage. So we're trained in a little bit of structural engineering. We have an app that we use to help us with that. We go and look at every building that was damaged and assign wind speeds to it. So again, that 150 miles an hour, that's kind of the top end. So there are a few buildings that it took about 150 miles an hour to do the damage that it did to those buildings. And so that's why we go through and do those surveys. So that's where that EF3, EF4, whatever it might be, that's where it comes from. It actually comes from us after the event. But in this case, we were giving press conferences with the mayor, with SEMA, the City Emergency Management Agency, and then we also were providing support months after the tornado for any time that there were storms coming, because there are a lot of people still out cleaning up, a lot of volunteers, a lot of folks out in the elements. So we actually would kind of keep a weather watch for them. Really, I think we stopped that just a few weeks ago, so we kept doing that every single day, just to let them know that, hey, there's another storm coming, you need to get people inside. So that's another kind of service that we offer kind of in the background. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ty here.
So I'll be fairly brief, and then we'll let Kevin come back up and answer any questions that you have. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about what that looked like then from a WashU construct. So Kevin gave the big picture of how all this is happening. What does that mean within the context of the university? Well, to take you back to Friday, May 16th, at 4 o'clock in the morning, this packet, DSS packet, Decision Services packet, was released by the National Weather Service. So as an emergency manager, this is not what you want to wake up and see from the National Weather Service. A couple of things when we look at this that makes our skin crawl a little bit. One, we don't get a lot of the 4 out of 4 type ratings for that moderate risk very often. So when we see a 4, and especially when we see a 5, that makes us go, we really need to pay attention to this. Another thing that really stuck out to us is there is not a lot of difference between the 1 up in Hannibal to the 4 down in St. Louis. And so that's a pretty small margin for error. And if anything, being an emergency management has taught me anything, there's a lot of opportunity for variability within that. It could start to get way worse, it could be way better, but the one thing we know is we need to be ready and prepared because something is probably going to come. The second thing that really caught our attention was there may not be a lot of tornadoes, but if those tornadoes do spin up because of the nature of the supercells that are projected, they are going to be strong, potentially EF2 plus tornadoes. And we're going to have large, potentially baseball-sized hail that could be impacting the community. Both of those are things that really get our attention, and we immediately focus in on and go, okay, emergency management team, we need to be aware of this. This is something we got to watch out for. Now, in full transparency, this product on Friday morning was not the first time that we got information from the Weather Service on this weather coming. They actually do a really good job of giving us a heads up days in advance. So even by midweek, we didn't know necessarily what the exact severity might be or what the probability would be, but we knew something was coming. We knew it was going to be a little bit worse than just your normal run-of-the-mill thunderstorms like maybe we had this last weekend, and they did a fantastic job of at least raising the flag and saying, keep apprised, things are going to be coming, you need to pay attention, and we did. So we received that, and we immediately on the emergency management side started coordinating with all of our key partners across the university. This is largely a team that we refer to as the crisis management team, and it's representatives that number about 80 to 90 people, everything from parking, transportation, facilities, operations, human resources, IT, all of the key service areas that they need to be able to respond during an emergency. And we started notifying them and letting them know, hey, we need to be watching out for what could be some potential weather. In addition, we had some large outdoor events. In fact, at the time, the Danforth campus was hosting the NCAA Division III softball tournament on campus. Bad day to be hosting an outdoor softball tournament on campus. Nothing they could do, it was pre-scheduled, but something that was going to be a fairly large, visible outdoor event on campus that we needed to have on our radar to be able to notify if we needed. So we began to adopt that posture of monitoring and keeping an eye on what we needed to be ready for. So that then takes us through the timeline of what that looks like for us. A little bit after noon, the Weather Service issues a tornado watch. So our team, we have multiple folks who are on team. They're on that system called Slack that Kevin described. And so we are literally getting real-time information from the National Weather Service. And we had multiple members of our team that were actively in that, communicating immediately with the Weather Service when they were issuing these products. They issued the tornado watch, and that was the indicator to our team that, okay, it's game time, be ready. We have some weather that's going to be coming. We need to be actively watching that, monitoring that. We need to stay tuned into that throughout the duration of this event. At 2:08, the National Weather Service issued a severe thunderstorm warning, which was expected. We had a tornado watch. We saw these starting to come in as that radar showed that Kevin put in motion a little bit ago. We knew these were coming from several counties west of us, and it was coming through, so we saw this progressing, and we knew it was on its way. At 2:34 is where things really started to get tricky. That's when the tornado warning was issued for the St. Louis County area, and specifically starting just outside of Clayton. So we had staff that saw this coming. Fortunately, because of the connectivity to the Weather Service and our ability to monitor that in Slack, we received information in there via that flashing red light emoji seconds before that went out to our group, which gave us a couple of critical moments to be able to prepare for sending out an emergency tornado warning alert. So at 2:34, that tornado warning was issued there right outside the city of Clayton as a starting point, and that immediately initiated us sending out a WashU alert to the campus community. And I know anybody who's been here for, I don't know, within the last 6 months is very familiar with WashU alerts because you get inundated with them during a tornado event a lot. You're probably tired of receiving those. We're tired of sending them, but we got no choice because we got to let you know when there's a tornado and something you need to be able to take action on. Fortunately, our system worked as expected. So within about 70 seconds, we were able to notify 100% of the stakeholders within our system. It took roughly about 27 seconds for about 40,000 text messages to go out to the campus community when we went back and looked at the logs of the records. So tornado warning was issued. Within a minute, we did a very credible job of notifying via personal devices all of our university community on all of our campuses. And that's in addition, if any of you happen to be working on that day, to all the warnings that were going on in all of our buildings because of the connectivity to the fire alarm systems and flashing beacons and desktop overrides. So via all those mechanisms, within that 70 seconds, we feel that we were able to notify the campus community in a very quick manner. Because of where this tornado initiated in the city of Clayton, the folks on our Danforth campus really only had about 4 minutes of notice prior to the impact. And that's why these warning systems, and that's why the early notifications and the connectivity to the Weather Service are so important, because those 4 minutes are critical to making sure that our campus is able to take safe, protective actions before the tornado hits them. The Weather Service does an amazing job of pre-warning. The warnings that they put out and the polygons that they put out typically offer a lot of lead time. Unfortunately, tornadoes have to start somewhere. Right? There has to be a point where they say, okay, this is going to be a tornado. We're starting it. Unfortunately for us, that started in the city of Clayton, very close to the Danforth campus. That's just where this thing started this time. And so we didn't have a lot of time for that warning. We sent the warning out. We didn't have a lot of time for protective actions. We had several things working in our favor. One, this was about a week after the university's commencement. As a result, we didn't have many people on campus. The students, the large undergraduate student population on the Danforth campus had already gone home for the summer. Many of our staff on the Danforth campus and faculty were taking advantage of the students being gone to go on vacation. There were not a lot of people over on that campus, comparatively speaking. That would have been a much different event a week prior in the middle of our outdoor commencement ceremonies and activities that were happening. Much higher risk, much different. Timing really played into our favor for that. So, Friday then, the tornado is initiated in Clayton, intensifies to an EF3, moves northeast, just like Kevin described in his slides, a mile wide, wind speeds exceeding 150 miles an hour. From about 220 to about 250, all WashU campuses were in a shelter-in-place state. We'd sent the WashU alert, we asked people to take refuge, and for that half an hour, we asked people to stay within their areas of refuge. And we are always, even though it passed through the city of Clayton first, we are always going to err on the side of keeping people in those areas of refuge until the tornado warning has expired. So even after it had passed, there's some amount of time after that where we ask people to stay sheltered because we want to make sure that everybody's safe. Plus, at the time it went through the Danforth campus, we didn't know if that was going to come on and continue to impact the School of Medicine campus, which also could cause much different cascading problems for our campus over here. So once the tornado warning expired, we got out of our shelter-in-place situation. We looked, there was quite a bit of physical damage on the Danforth campus. Lots. Fortunately, no major injuries occurred as a result of that, but millions of dollars of physical, structural damage, trees that were damaged, roofs that were damaged, pretty considerable damage over there. Fortunately for us on the School of Medicine campus, damage was extremely minimal. As you saw by the radar, or by the track here, it went northeast in Forest Park, clipped Forest Park after going across the Danforth campus, and the School of Medicine campus on the east side of Forest Park here was largely untouched by the bulk of this extremely high winds. So we fared very well. That could have been a much different scenario had that come straight across the park, especially with the large population that we had in place over here. So as we continued to respond then on Friday, we came out of shelter, we did an initial triage of the property, a damage assessment to understand what the impacts were. We set in motion what we call our crisis management team and our core team. We immediately brought everybody together to start to do an assessment and bring that team to respond. Interestingly, on the Danforth campus for an incident that occurs, our emergency operations center is actually off of Rosedale at the North campus over there. If any of you have been over that way, it's right there off of Del Mar. There's a metro stop there. So if anybody's familiar, that's where our emergency operations center is for the North campus. Unfortunately, all the power was out due to the tornado at that campus. So we went to respond to the EOC there, and there was no power. Wasn't good. So instead, we utilized our alternate operations, and we brought our crisis management team to the School of Medicine Emergency Operations Center. And for that first operational period, we operated the response to that out of the School of Medicine's Emergency Operations Center because it was less impacted, had full power, and we had all the resources needed, and we brought the Danforth campus partners over here to be able to operate. We continued to update our executive leadership, continued to update on the status of debris cleanup. There was a mass casualty incident declared here on the School of Medicine with our hospital partners because they knew there was going to be significant injuries and they didn't know the entire extent of it. So we had a mission to assist with supporting on the medical side our campus partners who were in a mass casualty incident state. So then Saturday and Sunday, as things began to progress, WashU was able to reopen on the North Campus when we restored power on Saturday, and we were able to then do in-depth damage assessment. This included things like setting up drones to assess all of the buildings from an aerial photography standpoint. Within about 24 hours, we were able to do a fairly detailed damage assessment through drone surveillance where we could actually compare pre- and post-state building damage and assess those in a quick manner as a result of that. And then on Sunday, full power was restored to the Danforth campus, and we were able to largely continue with damage assessment, continue with debris cleanup, and start to get back to a major open status. It took about a week on the Danforth campus for us to start allowing people to come back to campus in a regular manner. We asked people to stay away. Areas just south of the Danforth campus were hit much harder, and the City of Clayton had an emergency order in place asking people not to travel to areas that they didn't need to for a business reason to ensure that those roads were not congested and emergency traffic could get through. And then we demobilized the EOC, even though we continued recovery operations at about 3 o'clock on Sunday. So what are the important takeaways that I want you to know as we look at this, or the things that are important to me and how we support you? One, it's important to stay weather aware. The Weather Service is putting these products out there days in advance. Listen to the National Weather Service, listen to their products, listen to your local meteorologists, and when they say things like there could be thunderstorm activity, or when there's things like a possible severe thunderstorm watch, a tornado watch, pay attention. Those are important triggers that mean something, and it's important for you to know and be aware that those are coming so that you're not caught by surprise. Second, when an alert is issued, take action. Don't just put it off. Realize when a tornado warning is issued, that means we want you to take protective action, and that means going to one of our severe weather refuge areas. On our campus, in all of our buildings, in most of our buildings, we have lots of them in elevator lobbies, near exits. We have a map like this. On all of these maps, there are green hatched areas. Those green hatched areas are designated as severe weather areas of refuge, or best available refuge areas. So as a part of the assessment, all of our campus buildings have been assessed by engineers. That's a contracted service that we did for every building. And they looked at the spaces in the buildings and said, out of all the areas you could go, the areas in green are the most likely to keep you safer and more protected during a tornado event. Go to one of those maps in the buildings that you frequent and the buildings you work in, look for those green hatched areas and know where it is you need to go prior to a tornado warning, and when that alert is issued, go to that area. Additionally, we have areas in our buildings that do not have good cell phone coverage, so when you get issued a text message from our system, you may not receive that phone call, you may not receive that text message. We encourage you to download the WashU Safe app. The WashU Safe app is freely available on the App Store, and it also pushes all of our alerts. So if you're connected on your cellular phone to the Wi-Fi, you will still get that push alert from the WashU Safe app. Those of you that work with vendors and contractors on site too, this is the best way for them to have access to those alerts. So if you bring contracted electricians, plumbers, other folks on campus, have them download the WashU Safe app, so if they're here and we send an alert, they will get that push just in the same way that someone on our campus community could be. And these are, I think, the most important takeaways that you need to know to stay safe during a tornado event here on the WashU campus. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin, and this is your opportunity for any questions you have related to severe weather tornadoes, the weather service, or any of those types of events here in the St. Louis area.
Yes, please ask away. Now's the chance. Yes, sir.
So I have two questions for you. I'm a former floodplain administrator and emergency management director. Where are they at on narrowing the scope of the warnings? Last I was really checking, the largest tornado was about 2.5 miles wide on the ground. And so I was in North County. We had the Easter tornado. I mean, multiple. They tracked almost exactly the same through Bridgeton. Complacency is the big problem. I mean, I think we've had 3 tornado warnings or so in the last year here, but, you know, certainly flash flood warnings. Can't we get it where we're going to be a cell tower or something? You know, I mean, if your alarms are going off 10, 15 times a year, I mean, I go outside and look. I was on Forest Park that day, you know.
No, great question. So, one thing that we've done at the Weather Service, we did this years ago, was we went to polygons. So the reason we did that is, as you mentioned, we're trying to limit, we used to do county-based. So we're just drawing the polygon to the storm now. Cell phone alerts you mentioned, so we do have the method, the wireless emergency alert system. So anytime we put out a tornado warning in that polygon, everyone's cell phones will go off, but only within the polygon. Where I think we still struggle, and I'm working this with some of my colleagues, is siren policies. Those that live in St. Louis County, the entire county sounds the sirens, even if the storm is in North County, right? Good news, actually in a couple weeks, they're actually going to go to zones. They're going to have a north zone, a central zone, and a southern zone. Still doesn't completely solve this problem, but it'll help. So when a storm's in Arnold, you're not going to sound the sirens in Florissant and Ferguson, right? So we're getting there. We're also, there's a lot of new technology coming out. It's called More on Forecast, where we are going to be able to get a lot more smaller and tailored with our polygons. Or we're hoping to even shrink our polygons more than they are now. So I hear you loud and clear as the WCM, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. That's one of my biggest issues is the complacency. And if you look in the Joplin tornado, that played a big part in the loss of life in the Joplin tornado, because their sirens, I think, went off 4 or 5 times that day. And so the time that they really needed to take action, some did not. So great points. Yes?
So, storm spotters.
Yep.
Call. I know this is a big thing back a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, do those still matter? Call in, they send you pictures?
Absolutely. So we do storm spotter training every year. Usually we do it from late January through early April, kind of right before our peak severe weather season in the spring. But no, absolutely. We come out, we train folks, let them know what to look for. Kind of like that supercell thing I showed you, a lot more of that, how to read radar. So we still rely on them quite a bit. I'd say we rely on them a little bit more in the more rural areas, just because we have less people to get reports from. But they are still extremely useful here in the city as well.
So unfortunately, I was stuck in a $9 park when the storm came through.
Ah.
So I was watching it from afar, not knowing exactly where it was going.
Sure.
No substance. So
Mm.
it was like, I mean, I got to WashU.
Yeah, but that was about it. At least those went. Yeah. But yeah, anybody that's interested in storm spotter training, yep, we absolutely still offer that in the late winter. I saw a hand over here. Other questions? Yes.
So I have younger kids that get really upset about, storms. Why do so many of them happen overnight?
Good question. So this time of year, well, I shouldn't say this time of year, really any time of year, a lot of our storm systems come out of the plains. So they'll kind of produce storms and start storms during the daytime in the plains, and then they kind of move east, and just the timing works out that they typically can get here overnight and in the early morning hours. So that's usually why. There are other times where it's just, the timing of the storm is just through us right at the overnight hours, but a lot of times these systems form in the plains during the day and then work their way east overnight. Good question. Yeah?
So how do the ball get dropped from not alerting? I know what you guys are. How do the ball get dropped from the system to let that north side know?
The sirens you're referring to? Yeah, so we don't have a direct say in the sirens. So what the Weather Service does is I work with, Ty and other emergency managers on their policies and their processes. So I did have a relationship with the SEMA down there, the Emergency Management Agency. So I can't speak necessarily to how the ball got dropped. Like Ty mentioned, we had days in advance kind of talking about this. We had the warning out with some lead time. So really it kind of puts the ball in the court of the city at that point. And so I know there was a report, I think, released yesterday that details some of what went wrong, but we don't have any direct involvement in that.
But when you guys had alerted the public, system like
Yep.
that, somewhere down that line, because I just speak with Coca-Cola, and I let us, they let them know a week advance. This was a week advance, this was gonna come out.
Yeah.
Now, what had happened with that, there was nobody, they said there was nobody at that site.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. One thing though that should everybody have gotten was their cell phone should have gone off because of the tornado warning. So everyone in North City should have gotten at least a cell phone alert. But obviously the siren calls, the siren piece did not happen. And that's one thing we always preach, and I know Ty preaches this too. You gotta have those multiple ways to get warnings, because sometimes our warnings don't go out. So maybe a weather radio is the best way. Sirens fail as we've seen. So technology can always fail. So it's always good to have more than one way to get that information.
So if I could on that really quick, Kevin, so just so everybody understands, your cell phones come with the capability called Wireless Emergency Alerts, or WEA, automatically enabled on your phone. And typically it's automatically enabled for emergency alerts as well as Amber Alerts. A lot of people go in, they don't like getting those. It's a very loud sound, annoying when you get those. So a lot of people go in and disable those alerts. I encourage you, at least for the emergency alerts under that WEA, don't disable those. Keep those alerts active and deal with the fact that occasionally when you're in a tornado warning, it might be a little bit annoying for a second. Don't disable those alerts. Those are really critical to have. And tell your family, your friends, don't disable the wireless emergency alerts. Those are critical in letting you know. And everybody who was in North City that did not disable those wireless emergency alerts and had cell phone coverage would have received that tornado warning that came through.
Thanks, Ty. Good point. Yes?
And just furthermore on that, every morning I still get my state emergency management report, like our situational awareness status today is yellow. Every official that's in a city or municipality should be getting these, they're supposed to, and this is where your local officials, you need to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to, because the state is very good on setting this, from bird flu, weather, flood risk. When you get an assessment, it's sent every day. I'm sure WashU is getting them as well from the state emergency management. So the problem is, on these local levels is where you have the holes.
Yes?
So is it harder to predict snow and frozen precipitation?
It depends.
Yeah, a lot of times, like this, you kind of nailed it on the head, days in advance, but,
Yeah.
you know, you hear about snow, people questions for days in advance, and then.
It doesn't happen, right? Yeah, I would say generally storms like this are easier in the sense that we knew there was going to be severe weather. It was just a matter of exactly where, you know, the tornado was going to form or the hail was going to fall. We knew in that area we were going to see severe. Winter's challenging because winter, a lot of people think, you know, it's the temperature of the surface that matters, right? Freezing, right? Below freezing, you get snow, you're above, it's raining. It's not like that, unfortunately. Actually, what really causes us issues is the temperature just above the surface, because you can get melting. So let's say you have snow falling and it hits a little layer of warm air above the surface that's above freezing. It melts, but then it comes back and it hits the surface, which is below freezing. Then you can get freezing rain, you can get sleet. And so that's where it's really challenging, is because we have to nail the temperature forecast, not just at the surface, but all the way up in the atmosphere as well. And so if you're off just 1 or 2 degrees, any of those points, your forecast is going to be off. So winter, especially with, like you mentioned, the changing precipitation types, when we go from snow to rain, sleet to freezing rain, extremely challenging to know. So we have to get it exactly right. We're going to get 2 hours of freezing rain, it's going to drop this much, and we're going to get 2 hours of snow, it's going to drop this much. If we're off an hour, it's all our amounts are totally wrong. So very challenging stuff. Yes?
To piggyback off of Ms. Pat, what she was talking about was the sirens.
Yeah.
Considering taking over the sirens.
Sure. You know, in a perfect world, maybe. The problem with it is that, you know, especially in rural communities, they use their sirens for a lot of different things. And in rural communities, I have a couple counties. We have 46 counties that I deal with. And a couple in northeast Missouri, they still sound it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They sound the sirens every single day. So who am I to come in and say, you're not going to do that anymore, you only sound them for storms, right? So we have to respect the people that are paying the money to maintain the sirens, build the sirens, and their decisions of how to use them. So ideally, yes, but in a real world, probably not.
I do think, since we're talking a lot about sirens as well, an important note, and not a lot of people realize this, those outdoor warning sirens are exactly for that. They're to warn people who are outdoors. These sirens are not designed or intended to be heard by people that are in their homes, in their apartments, in their buildings, in their places of work. Do not count on hearing those sirens in buildings. Maybe you will, but that is not their purpose. Their purpose is that if you are outdoors, that gives you an indication that you should go indoors and seek additional information. They are not intended to wake you up while you're sleeping in your bed at night. That's why it's so important to have multiple modes of warning, like the wireless emergency alert, or downloading the WashU Safe app, or our text messages, or all hazards weather radios.
Well, and I would just say the weather radio is probably the most important. You know, cell towers come down quickly when these storms come through. If you want information afterwards, the weather radio, battery powered, is going to be your friend.
It's an old school technology, but it still works really well, for sure.
I think we got time for one last question.
One more. Who's going to be it? One more. Maybe none at all. Oh.
I'll take it.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you know when it's safe to come out of your area?
Oh, that's a good question. So, we, at least at the Weather Service, like Ty mentioned, you know, we try to be proactive, so we put out those tornado warnings. As soon as it leaves that area, or leaves that county, we take that county out. So that's kind of our version of an all clear, is basically you no longer have a warning out for you. Now, a lot of counties, sirens especially, they do not sound any sort of all clear for sirens, and there's reason for that. Joplin tornado is a great example. You could have another storm right behind it that you have to put out a tornado warning. Well, is that an all clear, or is that a new tornado warning and the sirens are sounding again? So I'll let Ty speak to kind of if there's any all clear here on campus. I'm not sure.
Yeah, great question. Traditionally, we have utilized the expiration times on the warnings that the National Weather Service puts out, and that has been our form of an all clear. So when the Weather Service says the tornado warning exists until this point in time, that is what is considered the all clear for us. However, after all of the recent tornadoes here over the last year, we are modifying some of our policies because we get a lot of questions on that. And in an effort to better serve just the campus communities, when we send a WashU alert now, we will be doing that in a different manner, whereby when the tornado warning has expired, and if there are no additional threatening severe thunderstorms that could likely be tornadic or other tornado warnings that are in the area, we will issue a statement that says that the tornado warning for the WashU campuses has expired, and you are no longer required to shelter in place, but please continue to remain weather aware. So that is one of the enhancements, but that really is only applicable if you are here at the office. We would not want you, if you live in Farmington and you get the WashU alert there, we would not want you to take some kind of an action somewhere other than the campuses based on that all clear. So those are very WashU specific, campus and person specific all clears that we issue in coordination with our WashU alert system.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much for having us. Pleasure to be here. You need my contact.